Okay. There we are. So I'm going to close that. And shrink this. Turn off my phone. I couldn't figure out how to actually put my iPad on silent, so I turned the volume all the way down low, so hopefully that works. Anyway.
And turn off chat.
Thank you.
And did you open the webinar?
Yes. No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. I was like, wow, nobody's there.
Sorry.
Wishful thinking. Wishful thinking.
I started recording thinking I went live. Okay. It was live on YouTube.
You got a minute before you can start anyway.
Okay.
And Trish Barrett just texted me the chat is off.
For YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think I got everything. Got 2 more minutes. Who are we still waiting for? Still waiting for 4 people. Okay. There's Mr. Solikowski, and there's Mr. Weber. I'll share my screen. Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Right in the nick of time, Mr. Giordano, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And so pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by advertising such notice in the Home News Tribune, the Asbury Park Press, the board office, the schools, and on Cablevision Channel 118 and Verizon Fios Channel 24, and by filing such notice with the township clerk. This meeting was scheduled for Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. The board will take formal action on payment of bills and other agenda items. Mr. Merritt?
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. The Old Bridge Township Board of Education acknowledges that the law of this state establishes that members of the public, including members of the board, have the right to record public board meetings using audio or video recording devices, provided that that act of recording does not interfere with the business of this public board meeting. Therefore, the board makes it known that any such recording is to be considered the private recording of the individual and no manner represents the official record of the board. The board therefore takes no responsibility for such private recording and completely disavows any future use.
Roll call, Mr. Merritt?
Ms. Burns,
Here.
Ms. Callie,
Here.
Mr. DePrima,
Yeah.
Mr. Dunn? Mr. Dunn? Ms. Ellis Foster?
Here.
Mr. Giordano?
Here.
Mr. Solikowski?
Here.
Mr. Weber?
Here.
Mr. Carroll?
Here.
Quorum exists.
Okay, if we can all, just let me get it up. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think we're getting good at that, harmonizing. Okay, Code of Ethics Corner. I think it was Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Okay,
Code of Ethics Corner, highlight of the month. The board member will carry out his or her responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with fellow board members, ensure they are well run.
thank you. All right, so now we're moving on to approval of the minutes. May I have a motion, please?
I'll move it.
Ms. Ellis Foster, can I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Callie, any discussion on the minutes?
Struggling with the light here.
Okay, can I have a roll call? Yeah, roll call, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Solikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes,
Resolution 1 passes.
thank you. Next is
Hey, oh.
report.
Oh, sorry. I just want to make sure you see Mr. Dunn's here.
Oh, there he is. Hi, Rich. How are you?
I am late. I'm 2 minutes late. Wow. Into it quickly.
Yeah, Mr. Parton runs a tight ship.
Sure does.
Not me.
All right, so Mr. Dunn is now here. Okay, great. All right, moving right along, report of student representative to the board. Mr. Rita emailed me today. He was unable to make it today. So we won't be hearing from him, but in his words, we got this, you got this, Old Bridge, and we got you. So that's what I will say. Now we're moving on to recognition. And Mr. Cittadino, would you like to start that?
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. It is an honor to have our students recognized today. So move the Board of Education to acknowledge the following 12th grade Old Bridge High School students who demonstrated proficiency in one or more world languages, along with ELA proficiency, and will earn the New Jersey Seal of Biliteracy on their high school transcript. The seal aims to acknowledge and award hardworking bilingual and multilingual students for demonstrating that they are able to speak, read, listen, and write in 2 or more languages at a high level of proficiency. This acknowledgement goes to the following students: Camille Quay, Spanish; Sedvika Lingar, German; Samika Goal, Spanish; Jordan Petzold, French; Brianna Anderson, French; Crystal Salvador, French; Ashwati Nair, French; Nurhan Fahmy, French; Nurhan Fahmy, Arabic; Teresa Freeman, French; Diana Osorio, Spanish; Anthony Kravenchenko, German; Nadine Awad, German; Mason Stepper, French; Maxwell Goldberg, German; and Crystal Salvador, Portuguese. I believe now at this time our Director of many things, but world languages, Miss Anahita Keeler, will take over and say a few words about this beautiful representation of the multicultural diversity that is our Old Bridge High School. That is a great picture to see.
It really is, but before I take over, I certainly don't want to be, we would be remiss actually if we didn't continue. So Mr. Cittadino, if you would
I'm
go
sorry.
to the next page
Let me continue.
and
I'm sorry.
continue that honor.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Angelica Venegas, Spanish. Emanuela Botang, Spanish. Kaya Ruden, Polish. Darian Polwin, Polish. Emily Labor, Italian. Joseph Tancredi, Italian. Emilio Ciano, Italian. And Dominic Tenebruso, Italian. This would not be possible without your teachers, Ms. Harpreet Mahi, Nicole Engelbas, Ligia Morales, Britta Schmitz, Maria Stella Morapati, and Nicole Engelbas again. Now, please take over, Ms. Keeler.
Thank you. And I also wanted to say a big thank you to Ms. Fuentes, who has taken over from Ms. Engelbas at the high school temporarily. I wanted to just congratulate the students and congratulate the teachers on this amazing achievement. New Jersey actually is at the top of the list when it comes to world language education in the entire country. 51% approximately of our students, which is really not a very large number, but it happens to be the largest number in our country right now. 51% of our students study world languages. So this is no small feat for these beautiful 22 students to have accomplished. Just a little background on what the Seal of Biliteracy is. It is a recognition by the state of New Jersey's Department of Education for students achieving high levels of proficiency in world language, as well as showing proficiency in ELA. And the state issues an insignia and a certificate directly onto the graduating seniors' high school transcripts. So the students that you see before you have, succeeded not only improving their skill in a language other than English, but if you noticed, 2 of them actually did so in 2 different languages, and we're really proud of them. Nuran Fahmy did so in Arabic and French. Crystal Salvador did so in Portuguese and French. And if you also noticed, because we are an amazing school and an amazing district with lots of choice, although we do not teach some of these languages, we have made every effort. And I really, I congratulate and thank the teachers for going above and beyond, because we were able to allow some of our native speakers to take the test in languages such as Polish, Portuguese, and Arabic. We have to supply them with the appropriate keyboards and things like that they really needed in order to do this. So it really took a group effort. It's not an easy task, but the congratulations really do go to the teachers and the students. And to the students, if you are listening out there, I know this is awkward because we're only seeing your pictures here, but I'm really proud of you. And what you have accomplished here may just be the beginning of a journey. So remember that. Continue to study world languages because it is extremely important. And you've just opened several doors, made yourself more marketable for jobs in the future and also for college admission. So bravo, congratulations, and thank you again.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And thank you for all that you do for our district, Ms. Keeler. You're just an amazing leader. And I don't think we'd have this wonderful program without your leadership. So thank you as well. Okay, I hate to take this picture down. It's so cute. All right, I have to get on to the boring stuff.
Before you go on, Mr. Caro, I
Go on.
apologize, but there was one person that I did not thank who truly, when you said leader, it made me think of her. Miss Paling, who works with us in the World Language Department and ELL Department and every other department, Bridget Paling, she works with all of us. She put a tremendous amount of time into this. And I just wanted to officially thank her as well, because I thanked all the other teachers, so I don't want to miss her out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say or?
Yeah. Frank Weber. I'd like to congratulate all the young ladies and gentlemen on their accomplishments in having a second or third language as well. And there is one minor typo that needs to be corrected before you vote on the motion. It refers to them as second grade. I believe the one belongs in front of it.
No,
That's the
that
agenda
was,
from the, you're probably looking at last week's agenda paper that we corrected that last week.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
okay, yeah, that was, I remember that was brought up last week. I remember that. Okay, so anything else? All right. Okay, congratulations to all the recipients. And thank you again, Ms. Keeler. Moving on to Superintendent's report, Mr. Cittadino.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. This evening, we are joined by Dr. Caitlin Calandria. She will be working with us. She is the supervisor of tiered interventions and intervention services. And she plays a very vital role in our district. One is to talk about our assessment process we do with our students. And this will be integral as we move forward, as the Department of Education in New Jersey has applied for and received a waiver from NJSLA. So she'll be providing us information as to how we will use data, in-house data, to look at student growth and student learning. And then she'll also, as part of our progress towards the goals, give us information about programs that we have in development to target student learning loss during the pandemic. So Dr. Calandria, please take it away.
Thank you.
Okay, you just have to give me a minute. It seems like I lost. You can talk and I am going to go back in and get your presentation. Hold on
Sure.
one second. Hold
No
on.
problem. I'll go over the just the purpose of the presentation first, so you have some time.
Okay.
So the purpose of this presentation is to outline the background for our MTSS system, which is our multi-tiered systems of support, and I'll go into that a little bit further to explain what that means. But it encompasses our response to intervention program, which many of you are familiar with. We'll also go into how assessment plays a key role within that framework, not only for students receiving intervention services, but the district as a whole, how we collect that information, why we choose the type of assessments that we do, and what that assessment information provides back to us. And then I'll also provide you with some sample data analyses that we do within the district and some student outcomes that we've already looked at so far in key populations. And then moving forward, what some of our plans are for the remainder of this year and then going into the next school year. And then finally, as Mr. Cittadino said, I will also go over some of the plans that we have proposed so far for summer programs based on some of the funding that we've received from the federal government. So
I think do you see it?
Yes, we see
Okay,
it.
good.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem. You can go right to slide 3 where it says District MTSS Framework.
This one?
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
So we went over the agenda already. So, our multi-tiered systems of support, they're in place to look at the academic, behavioral, and social and emotional needs of our students. And again, I will go into that in a little more detail so that everybody understands what that means. But we've been using a tiered system of support since 2014 with the start of our RTI program. We also looked at behavioral interventions at that time, and it has grown every year since, and we always are looking at ways to improve that. And that's, involving everybody in the district, all the teachers, administrators, we all work together to make that better and better. We've been recognized by the state multiple times for our framework, and we are used as a model district in that capacity as well. Within this framework, we use universal screening in ELA and math, and that's looking at all students. And then we also monitor progress in any students that are identified in need of support. So that in particular, there's a lot of information that goes into that. So we'll get into that as we go through. But basically, this system is the most sound in research to say that we can identify early concerns for students and then address them through assessment and intervention. So we have the highest level of response within our framework for student needs. The entire process is based on data, and we look at data to guide our decisions, not only for those individual students, but we also look at classrooms, grade levels, and then the district data, and that's on a frequent basis. So this is just a visual of what I mean when I say tiers. So we look at tier 1. If you think of tier 1, this is basically the classroom instruction. You would assume that most students or all students should achieve grade level standards just based off of receiving the core curriculum standards alone. If we look at a traditional bell curve and we're trying to understand where our students should fall within this framework, we'd assume that about 80% of students would achieve the standards off of the core curriculum. The second level, where we look at tier 2, this is where we would provide tier 2 intervention supports. And really what that means is that there should be around 10 to 15%, again, if you're looking at that typical bell curve, and we do see that mirrored in Old Bridge within our student population, that would need an additional level of support. So students that might be about a year or so below grade level in a specific target area. That doesn't mean an entire subject area, but it could be something as specific as oral reading fluency, for example. So at that point, we would provide additional interventions for that student. We use data to continue to drive those decisions. And then tier 3, it shifts from being more of a proactive approach to actually looking at more of a reactive. We want to try everything we possibly can for the student within the mainstream setting prior to looking at anything additional that the child might need and investigating whether or not that child has something more going on, such as a learning disability, for example. So tier 3, these are intensive interventions. We increase the frequency and duration of these interventions. They're a much smaller group, and this typically affects about 5% of the population. So a little bit more information about the assessment process through our RTI framework. So the universal screening assessments that happen in the fall, winter, and spring, they're norm referenced assessments. So meaning that these assessments are standardized based on students across the entire country in given grade levels. So we're able to see how students fall to the average by large population sizes. These measures are also highly correlated with other measures of reading or math, and they're sound in terms of validity and reliability. That's how we choose our measures, and we'll go over the measures that we have in Old Bridge within the presentation. They're diagnostic in nature, and what that means is that they're highly predictive of a later outcome correlated with a broader measure of achievement. So they might be looking at individual skills within these assessments, in addition to things that line up with standards, but ultimately we're trying to determine outcomes for students and look at that information early on. And then our progress monitoring, which is the very detailed monitoring that occurs if we do identify a student in need. And this would occur even weekly or bi-weekly for students, depending on the intervention and the target skill area. And then this really accounts for error. So we can always think of that there's a chance of error in measurement. There's outlier scores here and there. If we're collecting data on a frequent basis, we're able to determine an overall slope line rather than just depending on 1 or 2 data points, which of course we know could be an outlier depending on the day. So that's how we really try to understand the nature of the problem, the level of need for the students, so that we can effectively take that information and implement an intervention that's designed and evidence-based to address the needs of that student. We also use this information to look at the effectiveness of our interventions. We can say we take data. We take research within data-based decision-making in order to say whether or not, if we have a certain amount of data points where we should see a certain trend line, whether or not we should change the intervention, or we should continue with that intervention because it's working, or if we need to move the child's tier into a more substantial intervention process. So all of that information plays into this, this entire process. Next slide. So when you look at the administration of these measures and how they're administered, our universal screeners are administered on grade level. And the reason that we do that, and that's for all students, so every student's assessed on grade level in ELA and math, And we want to know how far they are from a grade level norm. So that's why all these measures are on grade level for students. So even if a student is, a couple years below grade level on a particular area, we're still going to administer that type of assessment on grade level. That happens 3 times a year. Then when we look at our progress monitoring, that's when we go and we look very much at the student's instructional level, which is not where that's too easy for them. This is something that is right at this perfect point to instruct a student. It's not too difficult either. The same thing is what we do when we line up our progress monitoring measures. And for that reason, that serves as our baseline. Look at, this is our starting point. We want to know where we want to be. So we determine that based on percentiles, and that is all within technical manuals for research. So we say, okay, within a 6-week period, we want to see this score increase by this amount. And that raw score number is really what we do is we want to try to shift it to close the achievement gap. So even if the score increases, but the percentile rank is still only 8%, is at the 8th percentile, for example, the student might have gained 5 more points, but they remained at the 8th percentile. What we want to see is that it goes up to that next percentile where we would set a goal. So we maybe want to move it up to the 15th percentile, for example, depending on the area and what would be realistic with the amount of intervention the child's receiving and what is expected in terms of growth. That's part of the decision-making process within this framework. Another part of the process, we do look at our curricular and teacher-based assessments, right? With our Journeys and Envision programs, very important that we look at that information as well. These are criterion referenced assessments. So they're measuring a certain criterion based on the information that was taught to a student. So that's at a percentage correct. Those are the types of assessments that most people are used to seeing come home from a student or their child. How much of a percentage correct did they get out of this particular assessment? So all of that plays into this decision-making process. Just to go over some of the really core assessments that we use. Obviously, we use a lot of assessments, and I will show you just examples of some of that. But for our very, very core assessments, those universal screeners and progress monitoring, we've relied on Easy CBM for most of K through 5. And just this year is where we had to make a change with what happened with remote instruction. And I'll go into the difference with that as we look at these a little bit deeper. But we also have used IXL even prior to the pandemic, and then it served as a more appropriate tool in a remote setting. So we look at these by different grade levels, and as you get further up the grade levels, you really need to start to shift towards those content area assessments as opposed to some of these more skill-based assessments where we're looking at some basic skills in addition to standards. We want to look more at some of those standards. We still look at that up until 8th grade. And then once you get to high school, it really is shifting more towards those content area assessments. So a little bit more information about those key tools. So Easy CBM, this is a universal screener and progress monitoring tool. It provides us with both. It's a standardized normative assessment, and it uses benchmark windows. So there's norms for a fall, winter, and spring benchmark. So there's set time periods that we would administer this assessment, which is very helpful for organizing our information and looking at that data. And then something that's really important with this assessment is that we are able to administer one-to-one fluency assessments, which all tap on the big 5 of reading. And that's the most important type of information you want to see when you're looking at early literacy and beyond. And then for IXL, this is where we had to increase the use of this assessment during the pandemic. One of the issues with Easy CBM is that you do need those one-to-one face-to-face measures, and we do want to follow the protocol of how the assessments were standardized. So doing it over a screen is really not the intended use of the program. So we've used it just for anecdotal information remotely through a computer, but we don't feel confident in being able to say and report those scores that this was done in the manner that the assessment was supposed to. IXL, on the other hand, is made to be done over the computer. It serves better for a remote type of screener. So we did make the decision in this past summer to shift to using that for K through 8. We were previously just using that in the middle school, and then certain populations, we also use that in addition to other screeners. So the difference with IXL is that it uses a continuous diagnostic. So that's something that is both good and can be a little bit problematic. So we get student scores, but they have to maintain a certain amount of time on the assessment tool in order to continue with that diagnostic score. So we will have to stop and say, okay, we need everybody to pinpoint all of the students at this time. And that's how we would be able to pull large amounts of data, which we have been able to do. But just a little different process than what we have with EasyCBM. These are aligned with those learning standards as well as some of those basic skills that we're talking about. However, not able to measure those one-to-one fluency in the same manner that we'd like to see on EasyCBM. The combination of the two has worked well in remote learning. And then we do look at that above, below, and on grade level performance. And then there's an additional portion of IXL that allows us to look at skill-based SMART scores, which are more of those criterion referenced assessments, percentage correct, as opposed to percentiles. This is just an example of what we use. So this is aligned with our EasyCBM assessment process. And just to give you an idea of what we would look at to determine whether or not a student, to make certain decisions about a student and address their concerns. So if we look at below the 10th percentile, we would look at that as high risk, and we really want to implement the highest level of intervention services. Between the 11th and 25th percentile, we're looking at some risk. And then the 25th to 75th percentile, again, if you're thinking of that traditional bell curve, that's within the average range, within normal limits. When you're looking at percentiles, 76th to 90th percentile is above average, and then over the 90th percentile is significantly above average. You'd see a very tiny percent of the population falling into the very, very below and the very, very high. The next couple of slides, I'm not going to read these to you, but I just wanted to demonstrate examples of progress monitoring tools that we use by grade level in both ELA and math. So this is our K through 2. And if you want to go to the next slide, here's our 3 through 5. And then finally, and then the following slide, and I believe this will be made available so everyone can go back and look at this more, but and then this is 6 through 8. So as I said, we wanted to pull some information for tonight to discuss some outcomes that we've already analyzed, and K through 2 is a population we wanted to look at. In particular, there has been concerns brought up, I think even by this group, about, are we sure that our early, K through 2 population is able to achieve some standards? So we did this through our IXL analysis, where we have the most sound data. And just so you know, this is their overall language arts scores. So that's comprised of the following strands: reading strategies, vocabulary, writing strategies, grammar, and mechanics. And the first column is looking at the percentage of students that fell below grade level in this analysis. So this was from around January to February data. Percentage on grade level, and then percentage above grade level for our K through 2 in terms of those overall language arts scores. And then if you would like to go on to the next one, and then this is the same analysis for the grade levels for math. And the math overall IXL is comprised of the following strands: numbers and operation, algebra and algebraic thinking, fractions, geometry, measurement, data, statistics, and probability. And I know initially people think, well, how can you possibly look at some of these for that population? It is aligned with the state standards, and that something, for example, as geometry, is understanding shapes, and that so there's a very simple manner in how this builds within teaching students math from early on and how it builds up. And then the next slide, this is just to give you an example of some, I pulled a student, I took out their names, that was identified in need of an intervention early on in kindergarten, and we were looking just at letter names. So when we have a student who is identified with a reading issue early on, we also progress monitor them in other areas, but this is just letter sounds that I pulled. Typically, we'll look at phoneme segmenting, letter sounds in addition to letter names, and then word reading fluency. So in kindergarten, in the beginning, students aren't tiered. They just came into the district. Usually we don't start to tier students until around November is when we get enough data and information to understand that population to say, okay, we start to see specific tiers. Even though students are tiered early on, our intervention teachers push into the kindergarten classroom for 45 minutes out of the day, every day, to support the reading needs of the students before we're able to identify those tiers. And then once a student is identified as needing an intervention, then the progress monitoring would continue. And this went all the way through till March 2020, which again, that was the last time EVCBM was used in this manner, and then we switched over to IXL. But just to give you an example of what type of data collection we use, and we have been using for years and will continue in September. Which brings us on to the next slide, which is about moving forward. So we're obviously have plans to continue with that use of EVCBM in September, and the primary reason for that are those one-to-one fluency measures, which are key in looking at reading. We also have received updates from IXL that they're going to shift from that continuous diagnostic to those benchmark windows, which will be much more helpful for us when we're trying to pin down large portions of data that we want to pull to understand. The district directors and supervisors, we meet frequently, and we're actually currently in the process, but I've finished the first draft of evaluating all of our measures K through 12 for ELA, math, and science. And this is something that we do every single year. This year it's more important than ever because we want to make sure that we're really able to understand student information better than we even are now. And you can see, obviously, we try to pull data and look at data and analyze data on a very frequent basis. We will continue with more sort of the scores analyses through the remainder of this year and then into next year, building that into those plans that we talk about at the central level. With our universal screening assessment process, there's actually a portion of one of the grant allocations through ESSER 2, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in the summer program slide, but one of those allocations within that larger portion is something called the Learning Acceleration Grant, and there is actually a set specifications from the state of how they'd like to see us utilize that funding. And one of the things that's in there, which is very helpful, is to use some of it towards taking professional development to the teachers on universal screening, understanding database decision-making the best that they possibly can with the measures that we use within the district. So something that we plan to do is to put teacher liaisons in place for specifically for addressing building level needs and questions along the way as we continue to collect and analyze data. But something that we want to do with these individuals, which we find as a need, is to try to bring parent presentations through at certain points during the school year, because a lot of the information that we send home that has to do with these assessments is in an email or a sheet of some kind or a PowerPoint presentation, but it's not something that is conducive to all parents to access that information and be able to really understand it. So it's something that we would like to bring forward there. Another thing that we've received information from the state as well. New Jersey received the waiver for the state assessment for the spring. And this is very, very preliminary information, so I can't give you more detail, and it would be forthcoming from our supervisor of assessment. There will be some assessments in the fall provided by the state. One of them is called the Start Strong assessment, and these are shorter assessments, but to look at all those state standards and achievement for student population, in addition to the assessments we're already going to do that we just reviewed. And then we're also going to have from the state the kindergarten readiness assessment, specifically for our kindergarten population. And then another area that is being emphasized a lot through the state that we're going to continue to build on, it's already in our MTS framework, is looking at mental health within our tiered supports, our social and emotional learning, and adding some non-invasive screening process to try to identify students in the same manner that we do with our academic. So the next portion, and I'll be quick with this one, I know I talked too much, for our summer program, so proposed summer program. So again, we received an additional allocation through ESSER 2, which was previously known as the CARES grant. And with this funding, they've provided information about how they'd like to see some of this funding used to address learning loss, and some more specific than others. So we decided to kind of build this out into portions based on that information. K through 2, we're looking at specifically bringing students in for reading and math. So targeted reading and math instruction in evidence-based programs and instruction, such as our Project Read, and then aligning our math instruction with specific intervention programs that align with the Envisions program. This will constitute of pre and post assessment data. So we're going to look at students' needs before and after, not only to analyze the program effectiveness along the way each week of the program, but also individual student information so that teachers are able to target those needs within there. Something that the state did emphasize within the guidance on this is to look at certain student populations. So when we are sending out invites, because there's only a certain amount of money, and that kind of restricts us in how far we can stretch the money, but we are able to look at very specific populations. So the first wave of invites that we would look at are students who are identified with IEPs in special education, our English language learners, and students identified in need of tier 3 RTI supports or chronic absenteeism. Once we're able to see the, the percentage of parents who provide consent to allow these to see how many students are going to be able to participate in the program, then shortly thereafter, we would look at that second wave of invites, which would be our tier 2 RTI identified students and students with 504s. We would be providing staff training on evidence-based interventions in reading and math, as I said. Transportation would be provided, and then the estimated cost is around $60,000, again, from that ESSER II grant. For our 3 through 8 population, there is that subsection within that allocation of the Learning Acceleration Grant. There's very specific, there are just specifications on this funding. So they want to see 75% of this funding go to STEM-based activities, and then the remaining 25% to go to literacy and visual and performing arts. So within that kind of decision-making and thinking, we thought about the population that would benefit the most from this type of comprehensive program. So we settled on grades 3 through 8. And again, we would use a pre and post test assessment model, the same type of population that I outlined in the last program. We would invite into this program for the summer. The staff training would be a little different in content areas. So we're getting that cohesive instruction since it is a very comprehensive program. We would have theme weeks. This is something that our instructional council had worked on for a few weeks to really think about what would be the best for the students. This was not just a quick decision. They really spent a long time discussing and thinking, and our instructional council is made up of many individuals representing all different areas. Transportation would be provided. And again, this allocation, it's so specific, and there's about, we received about $180,000 towards that initiative. So that's that larger portion. We're looking at about, over 1,000 students be invited into just that one alone. And then for 9 through 12, we're looking at credit recovery. So our virtual Apex program to expand on this. And then the individuals that would be invited were seniors in jeopardy of not graduating, students who failed a 4-year graduation requirement, or any student in jeopardy of not meeting 120 credit requirements. And the estimated cost there would be the $25,000. That would be out of the larger ESSER II allocation. These programs are in addition to our ESY and Title I programs that are already ready to go. And that is it for me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Calandria, and I want to commend you for all the effort that went into that report and providing that key information. And just to piggyback on what you stated, that especially in the grade 3 through 5 area that she went over for the summer program, a lot of that is a requirement to have that program of the areas in which the summer program would cover, again, is required under the grant. So again, thank you very much. Great job tonight.
I have one question.
I'm going to give it to the board president. She can go through the questions with the board.
Thank you, Mr. Cittadino. Okay, would anyone like to, does anybody have any questions for Dr. Calandria?
Yes, if you could bring up the slide for the K through 2 grades for math. I have something I'd like to ask Mrs. Calandria or Dr. Calandria.
K through 2 for math. Well, hold on one second. Let me see if I can find it. Dr. Calandria, you wouldn't happen to know what page that was? Oh, here it is. Is this it?
I think it's slide 14.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Let me share.
Yes, that's the proper slide. Thank you.
Okay.
So the kindergarten children, in theory, when was this data assembled? What time period?
This was between January and February of this year.
Okay. So the kindergarten children will have only been at the outside the standard level of teaching for the period of time. And the first and the first graders would have another 3 months on to that, anticipated if we go out. But my point is this, the kindergarten children are 78.62% above grade level. And then we see a dramatic reduction to the first grade and an even larger reduction to the second grade. Is that indicative of a trend that can be expected as the pandemic goes on?
I would not attribute that to anything to do with the pandemic. The content area gets more complicated as you go up the grade levels. So, you're talking about basic number sense and fluency as opposed to some more complicated types of information. We also would statistically kind of expect this regression towards the mean, which would then we'd want to see more of that bell curve as we go through up towards the grade levels with students, leveling out in a way, because data is typically less reliable with a kindergartner as opposed to a student who's been in school for a little bit longer. So this would be, it's not surprising to me. It's pretty expected to see this start to level out and look more like that bell curve as we go up the grades.
All right, and with the potential that although you said it's not entirely firm, that the spring exams are going to be pushed off into the fall, later in the fall from the state.
For the state, yes,
Yeah.
but for us, we're going to administer a benchmark window just like we normally would. So we will not only pull the data that we receive from those assessment programs, which the information that they provide for us, but then we go the additional level through sort of the scores, which are some of the analyses that Dr. Ferry does through his company to look at this information in a much deeper level.
And so without having this able to be compared, without the spring test being available to us to see how we did done in last year compared to this year, are there any other groups that are doing the same kind of analyses that you're doing that you interact with, whether it's a county or state level, to see if there's any uniform data that can be gleaned from that?
Are you referring to looking at growth by a grade level from one year to the next?
Yes.
Okay. That's part of we definitely can look at other schools and districts to see, and find out if we can find comparative data to them. But typically within these assessment systems, that information is there, and it's over the whole country. The population size that they look to pull data from it are thousands of students, and that's how that the norm process works. And we look at that information compared to students all over 4 grade levels by those areas throughout the year. So growth in general is what the entire purpose of this type of assessment is. But with IXL, since we switched to IXL this year for K through 5, because Easy CBM, we have data for the past 7 years. IXL, the data is mostly for our middle school students that we can look at from year to year. For K through 5, since we had to kind of shift gears with this remote instruction, it's primarily this year. We do have some data. I wouldn't say it would be enough to look at and say where were our kindergartens as a whole last year. However, the alignment to Easy CBM should be something that we can look at and say, like, okay, with this individual strand, we can compare that to this particular assessment within Easy CBM and look at kindergarten as a whole and see. I would probably stray from going individual strand to strand just because it's becomes less reliable. But if we took our overall reading from kindergarten for each benchmark from Easy CBM, comparing it to our overall reading from the benchmarks from this assessment, it should be a more reliable comparison that we can certainly look at.
Great. I look forward to seeing that information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, does anybody else have any other questions for Dr. Calandria? Ms. Ellis-Foster?
Yes, I do. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Calandria. Very helpful information. A few things I just wanted to clarify. One, the summer program, that is all in person, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other thing, I just want to make sure I clearly understand it, and we're just saying that just because, and that everybody gets it, just because the state is not testing, it doesn't mean we are not. That
Correct.
we've tested all year, just like we have since for a number of years, at least 2014. So while children either were remote or whether they were in school, our process did not change. So we still monitor our students and our students' progress, right? That is not lacking. We're not, that again, irregardless of what the state is doing or not doing, we are still monitoring our student progress. Is that correct?
That's correct. And
Okay.
that would be, just to kind of give you a note in that area, thinking about how much we put into building this framework with all of this data and information on our students. I was still on my maternity leave in August, and I started like sweating, thinking about, I want the same amount of data that we had for all these years. And so we were already working on plans, well, in the summer to make sure that was, and I wouldn't have rested until we had what we needed. So I can assure you that we've been working hard on that to almost a fault. People probably get annoyed with me with how much I talk about data. So
no, we do not. Don't ever think that. And then I remember in previous curriculum meetings, teachers in the elementary level 1 through 5, because when they receive the roster of their children and the students for their class, at that time they get the information on where each of their students are at the current level, right? So
Correct.
based at least on the previous year, right? So
right.
again,
And then we reassess in September. So they have that, they have the information from, all previous years for their particular students. And then in September, they get the new data. And again, if we have any students identified, we continue on with our data process to look more deeply into that information.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that's it. I just don't want people to get the impression that it's not being done, that we're not checking on how our students' progress is, even though we were remote. That process has not stopped.
Oh, yeah. And I have to tell you, we shifted gears, and it was, overnight, and the teachers were phenomenal. I mean, they basically just kind of said, okay, we'll do this. And they did it. And that's the reason why we pulled this off. So kudos to all of the teachers that just worked very, very hard to kind of just shift gears, make this happen, and ensure that we still had that information.
Great. Yes. Yeah. Thank you to all of them. And I think for those students who do need that extra enrichment, I think the summer program, while I'm sure some of them don't necessarily want to go to school in the summer, I think for those, who need it and the families who want it, it really will help them with anything that, catching up that may have been lost over this last couple of months. So I'm glad we were able to use some of those dollars for that. And thank you and the whole staff.
Does anyone have any other questions for Dr. Calandria? No? Okay. I want to thank you for that amazingly comprehensive report and for all of the work that you did on it. It's just amazing how much work you're doing and have done. And I know how you are, and I know I can see you being 9 months pregnant doing all of this. So thank you so much for that report. It was so really good. It's great to see what you're all, I know what you're all doing, but it's great to see it on paper, so to speak.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Cittadino, do you have anything else in your report, or?
That would complete the report at this time. Again, just thank you to Dr. Calandria. As a superintendent traveling the state, I'm often confronted by other superintendents asking about her and Dr. Calandria and what she's doing and if she's available. And I say no as soon as possible. But I do offer to share her. She does act as a mentor for many people in tiered interventions across the state. and at the state level. They often come to her for advice. We're very fortunate to have her, the data-driven decisions that she makes, the research that she does, and to be key in getting us to switch to the IXL platform when it was needed when we hit the pandemic. So that put us ahead of the curve on many districts. So very good, and congratulations to her and all her hard work, and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Do we have any correspondence, Mr. Mara?
No, there were no correspondence. And Mr. Carroll, can I just beg the board's indulgence on the recognition? Normally, the board does a motion and then there is an actual vote on recognition. In error, we omitted that voting process. So if you would like, we could do a vote on the recognition which is normal procedure for us.
Yes, sure.
Okay. So could I have a motion on recognition, please?
Whoever will move it.
And a second?
Callie will second.
Any discussion? Okay, thank you, Ms. Callie.
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Sulikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes,
The motion for recognition passes, and thank you, Mr. Carroll.
okay. So next, moving on to special committee reports. Are there any? I'm trying to remember. I don't think no. Okay, so next will be the hearing of the residents on agenda items only. Again, this will be just on items that we are action items for the agenda tonight. So I am going to open the hearing of the residents for agenda items only. Please raise your hand and I will ask you to identify yourself and you can speak. Okay. Seeing no hands, I am going to close the portion of hearing of the residents. There were no hands raised. Close that and stop sharing. Okay. And we are going to move on to policy. Let me just get the screen up. Okay, all right. Policy. So we have items, just that.
There's no action.
I was gonna say there's no action. Thank you. I'm looking, I'm like, wait a minute, no action. Okay, so this was for the first reading. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Barton. Curriculum, there is nothing under professional development. We have athletics, and I will need a motion to move resolution number 1.
I'll move it.
Ms. Ellis Foster, can I have a second?
Burns will second.
Ms. Burns, any discussion on athletics? Okay, can I have a roll call, Mr. Mara?
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Sulikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Resolution 1 passes.
Okay, moving on to finance. And we have finance items 1 through 9. Can I have a motion, please?
Callie will move.
Mrs. Callie, can I have a second?
Burns will second.
Mrs. Burns, any discussion on finance items 1 through 9? No? Okay, can I have a roll call, please, Mr. Mara?
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Solikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber, Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
and Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Resolutions 1 through 9 pass.
Okay, so next we have non-certificated personnel office, items 1 through 2. Can I have a motion, please?
Weber will move it.
Mr. Weber, can I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Ellis Foster, and any discussion? Non-certificated personnel office.
Yes, we have 3 retirees. Mr. Weber, it's all yours.
I'm gonna pass on to you.
Okay, we have 3 retirees in a non-certified personnel office. Kathleen Hannon, Glenville, 13 years, Paula Monti, 25 years, and Lori Desapia, Memorial School, 26 years, a total of 64 years. Thank you, ladies, for your great work and enjoy your retirement.
Thank you, Mr. Solkowski. Any further discussion? Okay, can I have a roll call, Mr. Mara?
Mr. Solikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Resolutions 1 and 2 pass.
Okay, thank you. So next we have non-certificated personnel operational. And it's items 1 and 2. May I have a motion, please?
Callie will move.
Ms. Callie, can I have a second?
And we'll second.
Mr. Dunn, any discussion? Okay, roll call, Mr. Mara.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Solikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Resolution 1 and 2 pass.
Thank you. And now we're moving to non-certificated personnel other items 1 through 6. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll move it.
Ms. Ellis Foster, can I have a second, please?
Dunn will second.
Mr. Dunn, any discussion? Non-certificated personnel other items 1 through 6.
Yes, we have 1 retiree in this area, Maria Ripatori McDivitt, paraprofessional, 13 years. Thank you for your service.
I worked with Maria. She's a wonderful person. Congratulations and enjoy your retirement. Okay, let me get to that. There we go. Okay, now we're at certificated personnel.
We need a vote, Mr. Carroll.
Sorry.
Okay,
Roll
so-
call, Mr. Mara.
Yeah, Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes, and abstain for resolution 6.
Mr. Solikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Resolutions 1 through 6 pass.
Okay, now we're on to certificated personnel. And that's items, so item 1 through 30.
32.
32, is it 32?
Yeah.
Okay, it's items 1 through 32. May I have a motion, please?
Then we'll make a motion, certificated personnel items 1 through 32, Madam President.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Burns will second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Carroll, on
Yes.
page 6, I'm sorry, page 16, item number 6, letter D, there was a typographical error. The name of the individual should be Angela Bonk, not Jennifer Bonk. So if you would be kind enough to all make that correction. That's page 16, item number 6D. Thank you.
Angela Bach, okay. Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Nothing?
Yes, we have a lot of retirees in the certified personnel area. Patricia Horsley, Carl Sandburg Middle School Science, 23 years. Rosemarie Mattina, Junior Salk Middle School Italian. Pamela Jelinski Miller, grade 3, 25 years. Robert Quinn, junior, okay, this is middle school. Junior Salk Special Ed, 42 years. Denise Dempsey, McDivitt, certified school nurse, 21 years. Michael Contaccio, if I mispronounce your name, I'm sorry. Carl Sandburg Middle School, LAL, 30 years. Linda Carrington, memorial interventionist, 31 years. And Cynthia Fasanella, McDivitt, memorial, ELL, 19 years, but a total of 300 years for all the retirees. Thank you for your service. That's a lot of time, 300 years.
Congratulations.
People too.
Thank you, Mr. Silikowski.
I would like to make a comment if that's okay.
Sure, Mrs. Burns.
My daughter had Mrs. Carrington, and I just really wanted to thank her for all of the work that she did with her. And I know that she improved over the years. So thank you to all of them.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other discussion? Any other discussion? Mr. Giordano.
Yes, I understand obviously the need for the teachers and the special education teachers for the summer program, but what exactly are the guidance counselors going to do? Like, are they still going to provide like college explanations for the kids, or is it like what services will they be providing exactly?
That's a great question, Mr. Giordano. As of right now, the motions as they're currently listed on here, the middle school guidance counselors finalize their schedules as we're transitioning to block scheduling, finalizing those motions. There will be some adjustments in the middle school schedule, and the middle school Sandburg and Salk have 3 guidance counselors per school to finalize student schedules going into the school year. Same as with the high school, as a lion's share of the scheduling is done in the summer to ensure a smooth beginning of the school year. Many of the guidance staff are working the first 2 weeks of August. Additionally, there is the need for guidance staff to register students. So when a new student registers with Nancy Pepe and Central Administration, they get sent over to the high school, and those guidance counselors put a schedule together based on the student's transcript. So for much of the summer, the high school staff is either scheduling for the upcoming school year to ensure a smooth beginning of the year, or they're working with registrations, and the same with middle school.
All right, thank you.
I'll just add to that because you'll see a motion in May for additional nursing hours, and they'll also be assisting with the registrations in that process.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on certificated personnel? Nope. Okay, can I have a roll call, Mr. Mara?
Oh, yes. Ms. Callie,
I'm abstaining on 2F, otherwise yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Miss Alice Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Solakowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Burns, Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll,
I am abstaining from resolution 32E, but otherwise, yes.
okay, resolutions 1 through 32 pass.
Very good. So now we have, there's nothing under non-certificated personnel transportation. We're moving to supplies and equipment. And that is items 1 through 16. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Okay, I didn't hear who that was. So Mr. Mayor, did you hear that?
I believe Mr. Dunn was the first. I did not get the second.
That was me.
Kelly Ellis, Ms. Ellis Foster, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any discussion on supplies, equipment, and services?
Yes.
Mr. Giordano.
Mr. Mayor, what would be the benefit of not advertising for bids when it's possible that for some things we could get better deals on, or am I misunderstanding that?
Okay, so this public school contract law requires us to go out to bid for any transaction that exceeds, or for any purchase for a particular product that exceeds $44,000. That's the law. It's not a decision that I made. It's what I have to do to follow the statutes. So there's really no option other than to do that. However, what we have done, if you look at item number 15, what we do is we join cooperative purchasing groups. And as a member of those groups, we join together with other school districts, and all those school districts go out for specific, because we all have the same needs. Under those cooperative purchasing groups, one individual district, Ed Services or the Hunterton County Ed Services Commission, they go out to bid on behalf of all of its members, so that we're not paying for advertising, so that each individual district is not paying for advertising. It's one ad for all the same services. So, but to answer your question, anything that's over $44,000, not part of a state contract and not part of a cooperative purchasing, it is mandatory under public school contracts law that we go out to bid.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay. Can I have a roll call, Mr. Mara?
Yeah, Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
I will be abstaining on 7, otherwise, yes.
Mr. Solakowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Resolutions 1 through 16 pass.
Okay. Next, we have transportation, items 1 through 3. Can I have a motion, please?
Callie will move.
Miss Callie, can I have a second?
Weber will move.
Mr. Weber, thank you. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Carroll, we are administratively removing item number 1.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Can I, any further discussion? Can I have a motion? So I guess we're just saying on items 2 and 3.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
We already have the motion, so we just need the roll call.
Sorry, roll call.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Solakowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. Prima, Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Resolution 2 and 3 pass.
Okay, very good. Moving right along, now we have miscellaneous items 1 through 4. Can I have a motion from the floor, please?
I will make a motion.
Mr. Dunn, can I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Ellis Foster? Okay, any discussion?
Madam President, I just want to, see whether or not the administration came up with the plan to move forward with in-person meetings. I may have missed an email, but I'm not sure. But if it can be explained to us in detail before the vote, that would be much, very helpful.
Yes. Mr. Citadino, would you like to explain it or would you like me to?
I don't have the email that you sent out to the board in front of me, but if I'll just go from my memory of the meeting. We met with the technology department and Mr. Gajewski and my administrative leadership team, along with Mr. Caro. And we agreed with the board that we can now begin having in-person meetings. We will have those in-person meetings at the auditorium of Old Bridge High School, while in working in concert with our attorney, Mr. Parton, there is no cap on the number of attendees at a legislative body meeting, such as a Board of Education. The only condition is still in place by executive order is the requirement or so forth for a 6-foot requirement for social distancing. So we'll be using that as our guidance, but it's still, I believe, just based upon the math that we did, would still allow for up to almost 200 persons to be in person and present at a Board of Education meeting. The meetings would have to be there, again, remembering and reminding everyone that one of the purposes for this function is that our students work as a education and job placement program to learn TV function studio. That's also part of the TV studio function that can only operate for the televised meetings in the auditorium for the feed and in the TV studio. So the meetings would take place in the auditorium. They'll be televised. They'll be presented through YouTube, and there will be security present to make sure we don't exceed the 6 foot, and persons could ask questions in person at the meetings or submit them through the email exchange that is set up with our board secretary. I don't know if I left anything out.
Okay, so yeah, you pretty much, so yeah, and it has to be, and just to clarify, the email address is boardsecretary@obps.org, and it has to be in the day of on or before 12 noon, okay? Because I believe that's when Mr. Merrill will check it, and anything that is emailed to that specific email address, he will read.
Did you have information that just coming to me about there'll be screening, temperature screening, health screening in person, and masks are still part of the requirement?
Yes, yes. So there'll be health screening and temperature checks mandatory for all. And I'm just looking at the email that I sent. So now that we're going to be doing public meetings, so board members are going to be required to attend unless they have an active, if they have an active case of COVID or they're quarantining from COVID, they will have, you'll be exempt from the meeting. And in that case, you can, Mr. Mara will provide you with a link, a Zoom link, but it's going to be just direct to Mr. Mara. And so that for voting purposes, or you can watch on YouTube and call in for voting. But the rule is that the public needs to hear you. So we would put we would put the phone up to the microphone so that the public can hear your vote. And that is only in the case of if someone has an active case of COVID, or if they're quarantining, or if they got the COVID shot that day and they're feverish or something like that. Let's see. But you have to let, the board president, you have to kind of just let the board president know, which is me. So mass will be, and someone was asking a question, I think last time about, who will be in charge of making sure we're meeting the proper capacity. And so we'll have 2 security officers at that time, monitoring the people coming in. The other thing is, yes, so you said they're going to be on the auditorium. We're going to be on the auditorium, but in order to space us out, Mr. Gajewski is going to open up the curtains on the stage, and he's going to space out the tables up there so that we are appropriately spaced out. And I think that's it.
I have a question, please.
Mr. DePrima, yes.
Yeah. On the email, it said something about leaving our cameras on so we could be seen. But if we're being filmed, why would we need our cameras?
No. I'm sorry. I meant leave your cameras on
Tonight.
at tonight's meeting for the Zoom meetings. My apologies. I didn't clarify that.
Okay.
No, that's only for the Zoom meetings. No, you'll be on camera whether you like it or not in public. Any other questions?
Just a clarification, is the public at the meeting, since we're not doing the public as a hybrid in Zoom, is that my correct understanding?
Correct. They'll be able to watch on YouTube and the live stream TV studio like normal.
And questions have to be submitted by noon the day before the meeting, by email?
The day of the meeting.
Yeah, of the meeting by email only. So the part of it then at the end of the meeting where the public gets to speak on anything, the people who are in the audience can speak at that point?
Yes, just like a regular public meeting, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Giordano?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, okay, so by May 6th, I would assume all of the vulnerable are vaccinated, and most of the people in general that want to be vaccinated are vaccinated. So I would imagine that most of these restrictions would be loosened by then.
That would be a question for the state, Mr. Giordano.
Yeah, we'd have to see. We'd have to see what comes down from the state. Right now, we just only know what's happening today, and that's what we're going by. But we'll see, if that changes, then we can always make adjustments, moving forward.
Yeah. So just confirm it's the state's decision and what laws they decide, not by what we consider is the correct health protocol, right?
Mm-hmm. Well,
Maybe let Mr. Because it's a legal question, maybe we'll have Mr. Parton answer it.
Sure,
You have the authority to decide whether or not to have in-person meetings. That is reserved to the individual agency, which is the 9 of you. As far as social distancing requirements, wearing masks, those are still requirements of the state at this point. They are also still requirements of your road back policy. So those will stay in place until they're no longer in place from the government, which certainly I think everybody hopes will happen sooner than later. But that is beyond your control. The other issue that I wanted to mention is as far as the individual board members making the decision to participate remotely, even if they have an unfortunate situation as Mrs. DeCaro outlined, that is only an option while the public health emergency continues. We know Governor Murphy has been extending that on a month-to-month basis. One of these months, he's not going to extend it. We don't know which month, but it will happen at some point, probably. And when it does, everybody will have to either be there or be excused from the meeting, as far as board members go.
All right, thank you for clarifying.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I just, Mr. Kerr, I just want to clarify one thing. The public will be able to speak both times, not just at the end of the meeting. So just like they do now and before, public comment will be available for any agenda items as well as at the end of the meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, the only different thing about public comment is you're exercising your option under the Department of Community Affairs regs to say that they can email in comments if they so choose.
Correct.
Could we amend it to add that the administration would recognize the receipt of an email and send it to the whoever generated the email, confirming that their email has been received?
I'm sorry, can you repeat? I'm not sure if I understood your question, Mr. Weber. Can you repeat that?
All right. When someone sends an email in, for example, if somebody they send a question in the required timeline of 12 o'clock the day of the meeting, shouldn't they get back a receipt from the administration that it has been received? That's what I'm asking to do, to amend the function.
Joe, what's your current protocol with that? Do you have one?
Well, typically when somebody wants a read receipt, they do that on their side. But look, I have no problem during this time period of responding to senders that we've received their email. So we will, even though that's not stated in the policy, that's not objectionable to me. I will do that. If that's the will of the board, I will respond in that fashion.
Absolutely, yes. That's fine with me. Yeah, absolutely. But it has to, just to clarify, it has to be board secretary at obps.org.
Yes, and it has to be by 12 noon, the day of the meeting.
Yes. Okay.
And
All
we
right.
just have that somewhere on either under the event or somewhere. So if somebody's looking for it, they can find it.
Yeah, we should have that in writing somewhere.
Yeah, maybe, so if, how there's some spaces on the calendar, maybe we could put it there or something, just so people have that information.
Mhm.
I don't decide now, just so
Yeah.
they can find the correct email and be able to send it.
Yeah, yeah, because that's important that they know where to send it. Okay. Anyone else?
Madam President, I just want to sincerely thank my colleagues on the Board of Education, Mr. Cittadino, Dr. Hoka, and the entire administrative staff, along with our attorney, Mr. Parton, for making this happen. I think it's important that we show a unified front, and I think that this is a good thing that the Board of Education can meet in person and start that process of getting back together as a unit. And it's much appreciated that everyone worked together. And again, thank you, everyone. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Okay. Any other, excuse me, any other discussions on, we still have the motion on the floor for miscellaneous items.
Can I just make one? I just want to make sure everyone knows. So now the last day of school is going to be June 16th. Is that correct? We're moving it up a day. Is that correct?
Well, that's pending any more reasons that the schools be closed. You never know. Anything could happen. There was a day early on in my administration in which there was some event in the township that was not a weather event that we had to close school. So anything could happen. Well, we do have one more snow day built in.
Okay.
It still exists, but not having that snow day, the last day of school would be on the 16th.
What could go wrong? It's fine.
Now you said it.
Yeah, really sorry.
Keep doing this.
Sorry.
Okay. Anyone else? Before I move on to roll call. Okay, Mr. Mara.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mr. Solikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Absolutely, yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Resolutions 1 through 4 pass.
Thank you very much. And next up, we have board secretary and board business, and that's items 1 through 14. May I have a motion from the floor, please?
Callie will move.
Ms. Callie, can I have a second?
One more second.
Mr. Dunn, any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Giordano, go ahead.
Yes, perfect segue from what Mr. Parton was talking about. Resolution 4, readopting all of the policies. All of us know that some of these policies were made due to the extraordinary circumstances. So all of the policies should not be in effect next year, seeing that we're nearing the end of this, right?
Well, I think you can readopt them as of now to have policies in place. And as you saw in this recent policy alert that you had first readings on today, for example, I think there were 6 policies that were abolished or that are in the process of being abolished. That will be a hot trend in the coming several months as things like the state of public health emergency, if that is declared to no longer be the case, some policies will fall by the wayside. But to readopt them now is probably the better way to go so that all your procedures are in place, and then they'll be abolished as time goes by.
All right.
Are you okay, Mr. Giordano?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any comments, questions, concerns? All right. Seeing none, let's have a roll call, Mr. Mira.
Mr. Silikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Weber, Mr. Weber,
Yes, yes,
Ms. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. DePrima,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
No for 4, yes for the rest.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes. Yes.
Resolutions 1 through 14 pass.
Okay. All righty. Now we are on to the hearing of the residents. And this is on any agenda, any school district issue. Let me just get the, okay. So if you have any comment to make, you can, or question or concern, you can call in. I'm sorry, you can raise your hand. Let me share the screen. Hold on, there we go. Okay, raise your hand and you'll have the floor. And okay, I see Mr. Tim O'Neill. I'm going to ask you to unmute. And you can just state your name, Mr. O'Neill.
Hello, Tim O'Neill, President of the Old Bridge Education Association. I just wanted to speak to thank Mr. Cittadino and his team for the great work that they did providing vaccines for all staff members in the district who wanted to be vaccinated. The result is that by mid-May, everyone who wanted to be vaccinated will be fully vaccinated. And that's a great accomplishment in and of itself. Throughout the process, I've been in contact with Mr. Cittadino, and I can tell you that knowing some of the dead ends and roadblocks that he encountered in trying to get this done makes the feat all the more impressive. So just a thank you from myself and the members of the association for leaving no stone unturned in your efforts to keep us safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Okay, so seeing no other hands raised, I am going to close the portion of, okay, one more. Brooke, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Please state your full name.
Brooke Richards Patterson.
Okay.
Hi, I just wanted to, you know what, I had a unexpected company. I missed the first half hour of the meeting or so. Was there anything you guys touched on in regard to the 5-day return on May 3rd, whether or not it's going to in fact be a half day or a full day. Just, as it's approaching quickly, I want to try to figure out what my plans are with my 7-year-old. That was it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Brooks.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Brooks, Ms. Richards-Patterson, I mean. All right. Seeing no other hands, I'm going to close the hearing of the residents. And I'll stop sharing my screen. And okay. Mr. Cittadino, did you want to touch on the 5 days?
Sure. On May 3rd, students will report to a 5-day-a-week program. 7-year-olds such as Ms. Brooks Richardson's child would have a dismissal at 1:30 instead of the usual 3:15. So it would still be under the early dismissal protocols. And we would explore full days going further. And as we know, the requirements or recommendations from the CDC still requires 6 feet in areas outside the classroom. That would making it difficult, but we are putting measures in place. Obviously, all the students are receiving snack opportunities now, mask opportunities now, and we're moving forward with our process to provide them a grab-and-go lunch situation as well too.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kara, I just want to clarify, 1:15, sorry, Mr. Cittadino. Yeah. I don't want to cause any confusion. It's 1:15 is elementary dismissal.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, does anybody have any comments? We're going to move on to old business. Does anybody?
Yeah, I have one comment.
Okay.
How many of the certified staff, I know Mr. O'Neill spoke to the fact that we're doing much better, but, and he said, obviously the ones who are just willing to get the vaccine, what kind of percentage are we talking about, Dave?
So the percentage that we have is everyone, they don't have to respond to a request to to receive a vaccine, but everyone who asked to be vaccinated has been vaccinated. So there are a population of staff members out there who still may not want to be vaccinated for various reasons. And, there's no requirement from me to report that to me because it falls under their health protection. So anyone who wants to be vaccinated has been vaccinated at least one time at this point. By May 6th, the overall majority will have been vaccinated twice. And then 10 days after that, I believe it's 10 days after that, then they'd be considered fully vaccinated.
And then my assumption is all of those people will be reporting to work if they're not for any other reason. And that the people who have opted not to have vaccine will still be required to report unless they meet the, the medical criteria.
Same it is now. Everyone is reporting vaccinated or not currently, unless they have a health condition that is supported by medical documentation that precludes them from reporting to work at this time.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Oh, if that's okay.
Teresa, you're coming in and out, so I can't tell if that, you sound like a little mouse.
I just wanted to mention that the musicals are coming out, the virtual tickets. You can start buying them for Carlson, Berg Middle School, and Salk. And today was the first day of tryouts for our new baseball teams at the middle school. So lots of exciting new things are happening, and hopefully next year we'll be able to see everything in person. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Burns. Yes. So as Ms. Burns was saying, I received notice from the middle school music teacher that the tickets are going on sale for Disney's The Little Mermaid for Carl Sandburg. So you can purchase your tickets at showtix4u.com/events/CSMSF. I'm sorry, CSMS. And, you know, it will be a great treat. We just have a great amount of talent in the whole district. But I love all the middle school productions. So there you go. Okay. So I'm going to just leave that up there for a little bit. And does anybody else have any old business or new business? Let's move on to new business. This would kind of be in the new business. So it seems like I think we've moved on.
I would just like to say that, you know, I want to recognize so many people who were mentioned for retirement tonight. I don't want to go through the entire list, but many of whom I worked with as their building principal, or I knew them because I was the administrator for their children, or I kind of got to know their child or who worked for the police department. So congratulations to every one of you. Long, valuable careers, and you will be missed, and you have made a world of difference to many young people.
Thank you, Mr. Cittadino. Miss Ellis Foster.
Yeah, so congratulations to everyone. Please enjoy your retirement and your many years of service. And I also wanted to just kind of recognize an event from yesterday where we dedicated the field, a baseball field, baseball field to Coach Fred Cole. It was just a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. Coach Cole made me cry, which, you know, maybe the bar is not that low, but to have his players who have graduated. I had parents who I was talking to who said they remembered them when their child was a carpenter. It was just heartfelt, beautiful ceremony. So Coach, Donahue did a wonderful job. And of course, our athletic director, Dan Domino, it was just a beautiful, nice time to remember. And he was so moved. So it was a beautiful event. So nice to see, as Mrs. Burns was saying, you know, some of these things starting to get back and being able to see everybody and celebrate all the, you know, the good stuff that still is going on. So again, I thank our teachers who are just doing an amazing job, kind of doing this hybrid, having kids in class. I know every teacher I talked to was just ecstatic to have their students back, and everyone just looking to May to keep it going and really finish the year strong. So everyone continue to be safe, and I'll see you all in May on the stage.
Thank you. Okay. Would anyone else like to speak? Any new business, or we can do go to the order?
Yes.
Mr. Giordano.
Yes, so I am also too glad that we're going back to normal. We're going to finally get 5 days a week for the students, and we are going to have our board meetings in person, and the budget meeting is going to be a very fun and exciting meeting. So I hope as many people as possible get to show up to that. And remember to take care of yourself, have a good diet, exercise, and de-stress. We're in a very good place. And as we established earlier, the concern is the law, and the law has a higher priority for us over necessarily our health concerns and what we consider to be dangerous. So it's a legal matter. So we're in a very good place, and just enjoy yourself, stay healthy going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go to the order, new business.
Real quick, Madam President, again, you know, I want to sincerely thank everyone. You know, finally, after 13 months, we'll be able to see one another in a public forum, and it feels like a new day. And you know, I think that you know, it's going to be a good thing. I'm looking forward to it. I haven't seen a lot of you guys in a very long time, and I think we do better work when we're in person, and I'm looking forward to it. So again, thank you, Dave Cittadino. Thank you, Dr. Hoka. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for making this happen. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Anyone else? No? Okay. Yes, I'm looking forward to going back. You know, there are advantages and disadvantages to both. But I'm looking forward to going back. You know, don't forget, we all have to wear our masks and still maintain our social distancing. But I think it's a great start, and it's a great way to move forward. So I'm looking forward to it. And that's it. I don't believe we have an executive session tonight.
We do not.
We do not.
We do not. All right. If nobody has anything further to say, I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
So moved.
So, was that everyone? Was that
Yeah, that was Weber and Dunn tied, I think.
There you go.
Okay, Weber and Dunn.
Mr.
All in
Weber
favor?
and Mr.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We are adjourned at 9:12 p.m. Good night, everyone.
Night.
Stay safe,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Good job.
Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Right.
Good night.